Oh, welcome to the European Teams User Group Summit, the Oktoberfest 2019, and the last session of the day outside of the outro. I'm so excited that you chose to join my session on Microsoft Teams for Education, the digital hub for teachers and students. My name is Magnus. I'm an Office Apps and Services MVP. I work as a solution architect at Atea in Norway, focusing primarily on the Microsoft Cloud and the modern workplace. And I would prefer if you could save any questions till the end of the presentation. You can obviously just put them in the chat, but at the end, please come off mute or if you would like, and I'll try to answer as best as I can. If we run out of time, you can always join the Microsoft Teams for Education group on Facebook, where myself and more than 1,200 educators and IT pros are happy to answer all your questions. I've also got a blog, Teams Rocks, where I have previously covered some of today's topics. All right, so today's classroom isn't, or at least shouldn't be, limited to the time teachers and students spend together at school. And with Teams for Education, schools can get a digital classroom, a hub for collaboration and learning. Their classroom in Teams can include conversations, files, notes, assignments, meetings, lots of third-party learning tools, and more. And during this session, I plan to introduce you to something called School Data Sync, all the education-specific features in Microsoft Teams. I'll touch on a few best practices and show you how you can integrate those third-party learning tools to, expand your experience. Sounds good? Well, I guess no one can respond, but let's move forward. So School Data Sync is a free service in Office 365 for education, and it takes data about students, teachers, class rosters, and schools, even guardians is coming up, and a few more things from the student information system. And it uses those data to create and license users in Azure Active Directory and Microsoft 365. SDS will also create classes in Microsoft Teams with teachers and students in the appropriate role, as well as a few other things. And today, I think more than 70 student information systems integrate with School Data Sync, either using a set of CSV files that are uploaded every night using PowerShell or Flow, or by direct API integration from PowerSchool or, well, the preferred open standard, which is OneRoster. So any MIS or student information system built or that support the OneRoster standard should also support School Data Sync. So why should schools or school districts invest time implementing School Data Sync? First of all, these classes in Teams, they won't necessarily update dynamically if you create them manually and add a group from Azure AD. So when new students arrive, teachers will then have to add them to every team manually. Same goes for students moving from one school to another. Teachers will also need to remove them from the team and then remove them from the class notebook as well. There's obviously workarounds for this using tools like PowerShell or even dynamic groups, but School Data Sync also have a few other advantages. The service adds lots of attributes which are available from the education graph. They're actually also available, well, if you look around Azure AD, for example, you can find them as extension attributes, but that method is unsupported. So Microsoft, the education graph owner, actually reached out to me and asked me if I could specify that on my blog, because they really want people to use the education graph, since that's the supported way moving forward. And if people use the extension attributes, that there's scripts and functions might break in the future if Microsoft decides to go another way. Okay, so and these can also be used across Microsoft 365. These attributes in services like Intune, but also in third-party apps. We're also able to automate archiving of classes end of year with School Data Sync using only a few clicks. And this is an absolute must to maintain control with potentially thousands of teams being provisioned every year. There are also certain features like the upcoming weekly digest mail for parents that actually require School Data Sync, or at least initially, to work. Okay, so let's do a demo of School Data Sync. I'll just find the right browser. So I hope you can still see my screen. So this is School Data Sync. You can navigate to sds.microsoft.com, log on with global admin credentials, and we can then add a profile. Let me see. We'll give that profile a name, Oktoberfest, and we can choose our sync method. As I said, you have either the CSV files, and the CSV files come in two different formats. There's the SDS format, which is the most commonly used, and there's also a clever format. I haven't tried that one, but I think it's a format from a system that automates the creation of these CSV files. There's also the connect via an API. There's PowerSchool, which is the one, well, to connect to PowerSchool, and there's also the one roster that should be able to support any any student information system or MIS supporting one roster. These are the current providers available from the graphical user interface. Third parties who want to integrate and to be available from this list, they need to go through a certification process, and then they can also be able to be picked from this list. But we're going to try using the CSV files. So I'll just choose that and the SDS format and click start. So we have a couple of options here. We can either match with existing users in Office 365. Perhaps you have a local Active Directory and Azure AD Connect to add your users to Azure AD. So your users are already provisioned and licensed. Then you will choose this one, and you will choose some attribute to match them. It could be the UPN, could be the mail attribute, a few other options. In this scenario, we are going to create new users. For that to happen, you would need to have the username or the preferred username and the password within the CSV files. Okay, so we'll have some properties. You can see down here the school properties, lots of things we can add here, as well as section properties. I'm going to show you in a few seconds what that will look like when we upload the CSV files. So these are the 6 CSV files that are required for Guardian Sync, which is actually a way to sync parents' email addresses as contact object into Microsoft 365. We just enabled this one, and we need to add 2 more files. It's user CSV and Guardian relationship CSV. I don't have those files, so let's stick with the 6 required files. Click add files, find my 6 CSV files, which are uploaded. Okay. So we can see now in the properties that they have been auto-selected based on the data from within those CSV files. If we don't want things in there like, well, these are section properties, not so exciting, but there could be student properties that you don't want in there because of GDPR or whatever, and you could just remove them. We have an option to replace unsupported special characters. It's obviously so that the sync doesn't break when there's special characters within the files. So the school data sync service will remove those for us. And we have also the sync option for section group display name, which simply is a way to allow or disallow teachers to rename the team. If you're not selecting this one, school data sync will overwrite the display name of the team every night. But I like for teachers to be able to rename their teams. There's also a button here to enable or disable the delay student access. And this is a great feature for when teachers want to be able to set up their class team. Maybe they want to configure the class notebook or add a welcome message and things like that into the team before students are allowed to open and view them. You also need to set an end date for the syncing of the profile. I'll just pull one, but what this does is at the date, you'll probably in Norway, school ends in the end of June before summer. So we often put this to July 1st, and then the sync will stop. And what happens after that is that because August 1st, all the new students arrive in the groups because teachers or the school administration register all the new schools in the school administration system, and we wouldn't want those to mess up those groups, so we enable the stop sync here. I will show you a little bit later how we're going to do end of year. So let's just click next, and here we need to choose the domain. I only have one domain, so it's not that exciting, and we can select the teacher properties, which are also auto picked, and we can choose a license for teachers. Here we could also add if we had a license for Intune, for example. Okay, so let's click next. Okay, so we have oh, that was a bit quick. The review page where we can go through all the settings and just create the profile. Going to do a bunch of tests, and it'll be available to start syncing in a short while. Well, depending on the amount of users. If you have 10,000 users, this could take a little bit of time. Okay, so I talked about what we will do end of year, and I have another profile here. You can see that is called it's an old test profile, and it has expired and is no longer synced. What we can do then is we can end of year run a cleanup. If I click that, I have three options. It's mark classes as expired, which will add a prefix to the team name like exp, then the year and the month, so exp 1907, for example. We can also choose to archive the teams, and we could choose to remove students from classes. I normally don't advise to remove students from classes when we archive, because students most of the time need access or to their class notebooks and whatever happened in the teams from their earlier classes. And archiving simply means that the content, that being the conversations, the files, the notebooks and assignments, will be write protected, and the team is moved into the archive teams section within managed teams. And as long as you don't choose to remove students, all that content will be both searchable and accessible, in case they need it for exam prep or otherwise would like to keep it. So again, my advice is that you archive all student teams end of year. You won't miss them because you will get new teams with updated student information from a new SDS profile for the next school year. Okay, so that was me back to the slides again. Okay. So when school data sync is configured, class teams will be provisioned automatically. And this is what it could look like from a teacher perspective. You can see the list of teams in the left column has been replaced by what they call a grid view, where you can drag and drop teams to sort them as you like. Any user who prefer the list view can click the three dots in the upper right. Let me see. Yeah, okay. And they can choose switch view and then the list view. However, many students prefer this view for its simplicity, while teachers with many teams often prefer the original view because these tiles or boxes are quite big, or it's a lot of white space. So, but it's up to you to choose. The join or create a team button has been moved to the upper right as well. And if you click it, you can see that in EDU tenants, you get to choose from a set of predefined templates. You can either choose a class team, a team for your professional learning community, a staff team, or one that's called Other. Other is actually just the standard template known from your regular business or enterprise tenant. So it's just an empty regular team. If you were to choose a PLC team, you'll see there are a couple of things that are different from a regular team. First, the list of teams is replaced by a more focused view. This is actually part of the grid view. So if you choose to use the list view instead, this will be replaced by the complete team list. The other thing that's different with the PLC team is the PLC Notebook tab. You can see here. I won't go into details other than saying that it's a custom OneNote notebook. It's pre-populated with sections and pages, as well as some information on how teachers could use the PLC notebook to plan lessons, share resources, and more. Okay, so same goes for staff teams, where you will get a special staff notebook where educators and school administration can collaborate. Every teacher will get their own section. You can see this in the yellow box. And the school principal, or rather whoever is actually the owner of the team, will be able to view and edit the content in any staff member section in real time. I don't, yeah, well, some use it. Some think that it's a bit weird that the school administration has access into their notebooks. So this is up to the school to decide. The teams I find most interesting, though, and I'm going to cover them quite a bit more, are class teams. Every class team will have a conversation and files tab like any other team, but you also get a class notebook and a tab for assignments. And it's time for a piece of best practice. I think before you roll out teams to your students, okay, the first thing you do before you roll out teams to your student, at least if they are young, you need to disable group creation so they don't go and create all kinds of teams with all kinds of funny names and content that's not appropriate. But then you should consider whether to use one team per class with channels for subjects or one team per subject. There are different opinions out there. This is my opinion and my best practices from 3 years, well, 2.5 years of experience with this. For the younger kids, many teams can be quite confusing. So they often have maybe one or two teachers at least in the first and second grade, so they can live with one team and channels for the subjects. However, older students should have one team for each subject. There are multiple reasons for this. First of all, there's currently only one assignment tab per team. It's in the general channel, and there's no way to add it to other channels. Same goes for the class materials folder. I'll show you that in a bit, as well as the class notebook. You could, in theory, add the latter as a website tab, but there would be no integration, so you're unable to create Teams assignments into that class notebook, and it doesn't have the same integrated experience. For the assignment tabs, if you have, that'll mean you'll most likely mess up any analytics, insights, or reporting, because you'll be mixing feedback, grades, etc. from math, English, religion, for example, into the same set of data and in the same team. In terms of the class notebook, it can get quite messy with lots of section groups, sections, and pages in the same notebook. And I've lost count of how many schools that have reported severe sync issues whenever they have complex class notebooks that have a lot of content, which typically happens when you have many subjects within one class notebook. So a little piece of advice or best practice there. So while we're on the topic of assignments, teachers can either create a new assignment, reuse an existing assignment from any of their teams. They can even choose from those that are archived, which is important to know. Or they could create a quiz which actually would use Microsoft Forms. Teachers can specify. I agree from the message there. Okay, so teachers can specify whether or not late turn-ins are allowed. They can add rubrics, categories, and resources like an empty Word document, a spreadsheet, or a link. So, but I think let's instead do a demo of the assignment module. Let me see, find my team. So I'll open my algebra class. So, oh, I'm sorry, this is, okay, let me see. Okay, so this is Norwegian. Okay, I'm sorry, you'll just have to bear with me, but I'll go into manage team and you'll see something here that you don't see in enterprise or business tenants. In the members and guests sections, you can see we have all the students, and you can mute the whole class or single students if they use too many GIFs or get creative or funny within conversations and need a timeout. One thing to note is that this will only mute the student in the conversations tab within that team. So not the other teams they are a member of, and it will not mute them in things like chat. To do that, you need to assign a messaging policy where chat is disabled to that user, which is a topic for another time. Okay, so that was the mute. Okay, so we can also, if we go back to the team, in the general channel of any class team within files, there's a folder, it's called class materials in English. And what's special about that folder is that it's only teachers can write. It's read only for students. We had quite a few teachers reporting that they could put the weekly plan within the files, and the students went in and removed all the homework for that week, and yeah, all sorts of funny things. So Microsoft made a class materials folder. I hear from a lot of teachers that they would like this folder to also be available from within the other channels. It's not currently, and I haven't seen or heard from them that this is something that they are going to implement. So another reason there to have one for each subject. Okay, so let's have a look at the class notebook. Again, sorry about the Norwegian in here. Every class team has a class notebook. Which, when it loads, come pre-populated with some content. Every class notebook will have a collaboration space where all students can collaborate. They have right permissions there. It'll have a content library, which is right protected for students, so only teachers can edit in that area. Teachers can also add a teacher-only section, and every student in the class will have their own section, as you see right here. This is a student, no, sorry, this is a teacher view, and the teacher can at all times see all the students' sections. They can in real time watch students working in their sections, and they can edit, like annotate on the page. Students will obviously only see the collaboration space, the content library, as well as their own section, not other students' sections. We also have the class notebook add-in here. So, well, it's built in. So we can distribute pages into the student sections, like this is the homework for this week or any handouts. We can push those directly into the sections of all the students. Okay, so I have one more thing about the class notebook to show you. This is a brand new class team, not yet provisioned. If I go to the class notebook tab here, I should be presented with configure class notebook button. I can choose from an empty notebook and from an existing notebook. And this is new this autumn. And it's been highly requested from teachers because they really don't want to configure and set up their class notebooks from scratch every year. They used to have like a master notebook and things, but this makes it a lot easier to just pick content from any other class notebook and pull into this class notebooks. And these class notebooks can also be class notebooks belonging to an archive team, which is important. Okay, so just choose a couple next, and we can add sections and whatever. Okay, so that was the class notebook. So let's try I would prefer, let me just quickly change the language here. About that. Let's explore the assignments tab. Oh, sorry, that's not a good team. Let's go into the algebra team, which has some pre-populated. You can see the assignments bot actually notify within the channel that there's a new assignment. Let me open the assignments tab. So this is a page with any draft assignments that are assigned. You can see we have some analytics here, how many has turned in and how many has been reviewed. In the bottom here, we also have any graded assignments. If I open the introduction to algebra, I can see that 25 are already graded. You can see on the right side here, we have set some points. Any feedback has been added here. And if you want to see what the student actually returned, we can click this link. Okay, so no work for Enrico. Let's see if anyone else has any work. Okay, this is a demo environment. So, but you can see if this was a PowerPoint, you just open the PowerPoint within the Teams interface, and you could see what the student had turned in. Okay. So let's create a new assignment. Great. I'll create a new one. Just want to quickly show you the add resources part. Resources you can add from either from your own OneDrive. You can add a link, you can add a new file. We have Word, Excel, PowerPoint. I've actually enabled in the Teams Admin Center that make code should be available. I'll show you that in a second. And you can also choose to pick content from the content library, for example, from your class notebook as an assignment. And then the students can solve the assignment within OneNote, and it's returned, and they can get graded. Then the grades and the feedback and everything goes into the Teams interface. We also have, as I said, Make Code. Make Code, I think it's a Microsoft. It's a website where they have a lot of content pre-made for education. So you can have a Lego or perhaps a microbit assignment. Just click here, test, and then attach. And what happens is the student can solve this microbit coding example on their own device, and then can return into the assignments module, and the teacher will get the file so that they can see what the student did, and then they can grade and get all the feedback into the same flow, which is nice. You can obviously also add to multiple classes. You can remove some students if maybe someone need an assignment that's a bit harder or a bit easier. Set the due date and things like that. So let me discard this. Sure. Okay, so that's, I guess, it for that demo. This here is actually an example of an assignment, like I told you, sent into the class notebook, and the teacher can view in real time what the student is doing, and they can annotate directly on the page, which is very powerful. Microsoft has also announced a new gradebook, and it's going to give teachers a quick overview of grades and the average score across all assignments in that class. Many teachers are not that happy about averages, but some find that to be okay. And we can also obviously drill down on individual students to observe progress and perhaps reveal any patterns or tendencies over time. You can see Juan here started out okay, but now probably could use some one-on-one time with the teacher to see what's going on. Okay, so parent access has been highly requested. I think it's what has been lacked the most from my perspective in Teams for Education up until now. We can today, by hacking the SharePoint permissions, share parent and guardian links from the class notebook, but it's a fairly complex thing to do for teachers, and it's quite a limited solution that I don't see being used very much. Another feature expected in the near future is the so-called weekly digest mail for parents, where they will be able to get a report showing assignments and status from the last week, as well as assignments planned for the upcoming week. It's still far from what teachers would like, the kind of dream scenario, but it's an important step, I think, in the right direction. Okay, so let's have a look at some third-party integrations. Yes, that's Laura, that is correct. You need to not only use school data sync. I think it's actually only supported initially when using school data sync with CSV files. So, but as I said, it's an important step in the right direction. So let's have a look at some of the third-party integrations. One of the other top requests from teachers has been a way to check assignments from plagiarism. We've been able to do that for a while with an app from Swedish Higher Education, and that's correct, Luna. It integrates with the Urkund plagiarism service. What you see in the screenshot, and I'm sorry, this is the old interface. I didn't have this in my tenant at the time, so they have a refreshed graphical user interface on this now. But you see a tab that lists any assignments. These are picked from the assignments module, so it'll be the same assignments you will see there. And you can choose to send one or all of them to Urkund. And if you do, you'll get a plagiarism score, as well as a link to the complete report. So if you see a high score, you should probably investigate. And within that report, you will see what text that the service think is plagiarism, and references to the sites or wherever that service found the same text or same content. So later this year, I think probably in just a few weeks, we'll also get a native integration with Turnitin, where teachers are able to specify during the assignment creation whether or not they would like to check for plagiarism against the Turnitin service. So you can see the screenshot there in the bottom. This is from within the assignments module. You just click yes on Turnitin, which it actually needs to be enabled, I think, in the Teams Admin Center, at least. Yeah, that's what I think. Both of these, however, will require a subscription with the actual plagiarism provider, so you can't start using Turnitin before paying for their services and having a service agreement. Okay, so we briefly discussed the limited parent involvement possibilities. And what we see, at least many of my customers, is that especially in K-12 schools, Teams is not a complete learning platform. But modern learning platforms like Schooler, Swedish Higher Education, Norwegian Socrates from Enable, they can integrate deeply into Teams. And this is Schooler. It's a tab for attendance, and it's available right within the class team. A few clicks from the teachers, and any absence is recorded. They can add a little description, and they can choose whether or not this absence was, I don't know, planned, or whether a few different things. And what happens is that parents will receive a push notification in a separate parent app, while the teacher never had to actually leave Teams and log into a third-party service. Schooler has lots of tabs. They have for week plans, ILPs, all of the learning tools, as well as their own assignment tab with functionality tailor-made for certain markets. For example, in Norway, we can tie assignments to goals in the Norwegian curriculum, and we can grade the assignments in a number of ways that's still not supported by the built-in assignments app. Like in Norway, we have 3+, 4-, 4+, etc. There's no, well, we don't have that in Teams today, and there are other scenarios like turned in or not, or yeah, well, different scenarios. Another thing when tying these assignments to these competence goals from the curriculum, this data is also obviously stored in the Scholar service, so you can use those, reuse those when it's time for that parent teacher conference end of year. Yeah. Okay. So while teachers and students, as I said, work within teams, parents can get valuable insights in this case in the Scholar parent app about any absence, assessments, messages from the school, week plans, and more. And as I said, students and teachers, they don't need to think about logging into a different system. Everything is integrated within Teams and available there. Okay. Another awesome third-party integration is Flipgrid. If you haven't tried Flipgrid and you're an educator, go there now. It's a great service. I think Microsoft bought them just recently, and I've heard that Flipgrid will be the default video service in OneNote moving forward. Can't say when that'll happen, but I think it's at least in planning. So with this integration, teacher can record an assignment like a video in Flipgrid, and then with the share to Teams button, they can share a link within conversations, or even better, they can automatically create an assignment based on that grid. Students can then record their answers, and the teacher can grade it and give feedback, all within the Teams experience. And these were obviously only a few examples. There are hundreds more, many of which focusing on education. I know there's an integration with Wakelet, which is a service for adding or collecting resources and sharing resources that I personally like to use, and many other. And also they have opened up so that anyone who wants to use the share to Teams button can integrate that on their own site within a few hours of coding. Okay. One little last call to action. I actually don't have a demo, but learning tools from Microsoft is integrated in all of Teams, all of OneNote, the Office online apps, the Office desktop apps. If you haven't seen learning tools or started to use that in your own district, it's an excellent well, not service, but every teacher should know about and use learning tools. It's really inclusive, and it can help students with reading comprehension, with writing, students with dyslexia, ADHD, all sorts of things. So check out learning tools. This is all that I've got for now. So to sum up, we've covered school data sync, many of the education-specific features in Teams for Education, like the class notebook and assignments. We talked about a few best practices, some upcoming news in Teams for Education, as well as a few third-party integrations. I hope you learned something new, and we still have some time, so if there are any questions, please come off mute or just add them into the chat. Thank you.